This is the Dog Savant Podcast with your host, Brett Endies.
Hey everyone, this is Brett and welcome to the Dog Savant Podcast. This is episode 31. I am your host. I am a dog behavior specialist. I am based in Los Angeles and I train dogs. I train owners. I deal with some severe problem behaviors. I deal with puppy training. And this podcast I created so that I can share some of what I teach my individual clients in the real world to you, anyone who virtually may be wanting to learn more about their dog, resolve their behavior problems. I just want to be able to share this information. I've said in past podcasts it works because they keep having me come back. So I figured I'd share it with you. Take it as you will. Before we move on to today's subject, we'll talk a little bit about the actual podcast, the business at hand. I'm on iTunes. If you're listening to it, please subscribe. Just take a few moments to rate, leave a good review, share it with your friends. It really helps. It's going to get better views. More people are going to, be able to have more listens, be able to find it on iTunes. And it's going to help more dog owners. We do this for a reason. Obviously, I'm not getting paid for this, but it's something that I really want to share, and I want more people to hear about it. I also have a YouTube channel where there's a video version of this. If you're watching, hello. And that's youtube.com/dogtrainingla. And my website is dogtrainingla.com. You can find more information about me and what I do there as well. Okay, so with that said, I want to talk about today's podcast subject. And I've probably mentioned this before, I'm going at it again for the many time. I lost track already, writing a book. I'm not good at writing. I'm good at talking. I'm good at in real situations by experience and just what I've learned in the past, putting together real-time responses, kind of applied behavioral analysis of what's going on moment to moment in real-life situations with dogs and owners. Organizing it into some kind of system to teach in a book where I can sit down outside of a real-life situation and put it into it. That's what's hard. So I've got someone who's holding me accountable. I have to do 10 minutes a day for now writing, and I've got at least a rough outline for, the first draft of what the book may start looking like. And it's really just trying to recreate what I go through step by step with my clients, trying to address as many different types of scenarios because not one dog situation is the same. And I figured maybe I'd share some of that subject matter with you, and it could help me even get some stuff for the book, that I can put in there or even transcribe it here from the show. So helping you is helping me too, because I think if I have already my outline here that I'm looking at, I can get maybe talk a little bit more and elaborate on some of the subjects. Some of them I'm going to breeze by simply because some of them require research. This book, I want to make it really in depth. So stay tuned. This isn't going to be out for, I'd assume, at least 6 months to a year, but I want to have it even an online version of it where there can be video supplements to it. I also might have mentioned we're going to do an online program, and it's all going to be based on this A to Z of the most common reasons why people have called me in 25 years as a problem behavior specialist for dogs, and how to resolve it, and why dogs do what they do, and all of the different things that you need to know to put together a system to lead your dog, address their behavior problems at the root cause, and make them happy, make you happy. Some dogs require it more than others, but the dogs I find, there tends to be a constant of what's going on. It's not guesswork at this point. It's just a lot of experience, a lot of hours put in, a lot of unrelated people saying the same thing and observing situations that are very similar. All right, so I'm just going to walk you through it like I'd be telling someone I know, because I want to share it with you guys anyway, what we got in the works here. So, the title, we don't have a title, and I just put dog training. History of dogs and humans. That's I want just people to understand how it all started. And there's a lot of theories on this. I want to do some more research before I give facts and figures, but we're going to talk about how they first started interacting with man, the first uses for dogs, how we've had an integral relationship both for working and personal uses, and how we started breeding them for specific working tasks, and even now for specific looks, and I'd say to even suit emotional needs in humans. So we're going to talk about that. So we'll talk. There'll be a lot of details, facts, figures, and whatnot too. I'm a fact guy. Dogs are very black and white, and so am I. We're going to talk about how modern dog ownership, most dogs are treated better than the majority of humans that live in this world. There's a lot of people don't even have indoor plumbing or basic creature comforts, and these dogs are eating high quality food, living in climate controlled environments, having Tempur-Pedic dog beds, and that's great. I think it's a wonderful thing, but they also have to still feel like dogs and have a dog's life while they're enjoying these creature comforts. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Dogs at times have lost their sense of purpose in our busy and modern worlds, and that's really because we're using them for emotional needs. They are part of our family. We have a very close connection with them. That's the purpose of, why they first entered our lives as humans. But we have to get really more into what some dogs are looking for as their instincts, how they live with us as humans, not even as much as a couple hundred years ago, but things have become easier for us so we don't struggle as much. So dogs, it's now they're just there for convenience. We have extra resources, extra finances, and we can create a comfortable environment for them without having to put in a lot of the work that we used to be more integral in that nature. So we're going to talk about that, and I just end this first chapter basically noting that I should make a point that dogs are happiest when they're being dogs. All right, so here's the biggie. We're going to talk a little. I've talked about this in other things, but we're going to get a little bit more. We'll see what comes out of me, right? I can't even tell you before it happens. All right, so chapter 2, I want to have it be the many different approaches to dog training. We're going to start with the purely positive because that's very popular. It seems to be what makes most sense to human dog owners who aren't trainers, working dog people, people that, deal with dogs in a more neutral, if you will, business-like way. So we're going to talk, it's based on operant conditioning, basically Pavlov's dog, they associate something with something, and then there's a reward, and their brain becomes this pathway to associate a word or a cue or something with an action. A lot of times they do clicker training in this way. I'll talk a little bit about how clicker training started, but operant conditioning, nature works that way. You get a positive or a negative, and the issue with positive reinforcement is they don't address the negative, so it's an imbalanced way to approach dog training. Yet it's become popular because it's emotional. No one wants to hurt their dog. No one wants to have to roll up the newspaper, and that's not what we do if you do rational kind of training. Anyone who follows what I do, watches the videos, watches the Untrainables, you'll know that this is something where you're just connecting with the dog. You're expecting, I did my last podcast, there's a lot of internal growth we expect. We're not going to make life comfortable for the dogs at first when they're having to cope differently, but then once they come through the other end, the rest of their life is going to be feeling a lot more secure. They're going to have this, they don't need to treat everyday life like it's going to be their demise, right? That's why dogs need training, because they're animals and they live in amongst us, and everyday life can make them feel that something greater at stake is going on, and they react as such. And if we had, as humans, a believability in that, well, we would do that too. But we can remain more rational as regular life goes on. Dogs, we've created a society around them. They lived in the forest, if you will, in a more basic way for a long time. So I would assume there's more behavioral issues, and I'm going to look into this for the book, as we've become modern technology-based humans and not I'd say agriculture-based, hunter-gatherers. I'd have to do more research, but I think there's a big correlation between that. Okay, so let's see. I've talked about the anthropomorphism. I said it enough times in my life, and I can't say it now. Anthropomorphization. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might not be saying it right. Popular, but it's a cause of the great epidemic of dogs' behavioral issues since it doesn't address the root cause of them. That's the problem with purely positive, force-free type of dog training. Makes sense emotionally, but rationally, it's just not doing it. Okay, so balance.
What do you mean by that? Dogs as humans?
Yeah, it's what every movie and cartoon's made about with animals, where we humanize animals, and because they live with us and they have traits, especially dogs who are in sync with humans like no other species is. Right. We almost will feel like there's a human characteristic in them, and we want to believe it, and we can project that onto them if there's no issues. But if we're dealing with my dog can't even deal with a guest in the house, and I'm projecting onto my dog that they're another human that is equal to everyone else in the house that's human, they can't handle, and it's actually doing them a disservice to be in that position.
Anthropomorphic.
Yeah, anthropomorphization. That's the problem. I can't do the Asian. Anthropomorphic, I got that one. I'm good with that. It's the Zation one. I know, I got to look it up. Sorry, guys. All right. I'll admit defeat on this one. Okay. Guys, yeah, I'm wiggling here. I've been doing some yard work, and as any of you who've watched my Get Out There With Your Dog video, I've been putting more weight in my pack, and it's killing my hips. And today doing a shovel deal for 2 hours wasn't so smart. Anyway, sorry, I'm not trying to do a, wiggle and roll here. I just got to adjust. Anyway, okay, so balanced dog training, that's the next kind I talk about. It's a style of dog training. It uses a 4-quadrant approach to dog training. Quite frankly, I believe that's the kind of training that I use the most. I guess it would be positive and negative. However, I feel there's more corrections in it than I use, so I'm like a modified version of that. I do use treats. I probably don't use them as much as a balanced dog trainer or, of course, a positive reinforcement trainer. I like to use praise. I like to just have life be the treat. If you have a dog and we're using a command, and you've seen before, I use commands to create this calmer, more present, mindful state. It's like a meditation for dogs to filter whatever they're reacting to so they can lock into the command. That feeling of being calm, once that becomes the norm, is the reward. And then once they adhere to that state of mind, command or not, we give them a treat as the kind of bonus instead of luring them into listening or correcting them and then giving them a treat at a different time, because it's not all conditioning. There's a lot of this root cause of sensory integration that we have to address. A lot of dog training isn't talking about the sensory processing struggles that a lot of dogs have. It's like hypervigilance disorder for dogs, and then it creates this overreaction, insecurity, overstimulated response to show social events, dog interactions, certain transitions of life. And note to self, note to everyone to remind me if so, I want to do a separate section or chapter on the sensory processing. I do not believe I put much in here about it, but now that I'm talking about it, I will. See, that's how my mind works. Okay, let's see. So, I got to get up here. Let's go up. Up. Okay. So I haven't really elaborated much on balanced dog training, but I'd say as a training style, they use the right tools, they're rational, they know that they're not abusing a dog or emotionally tormenting them or making them hate their owners by using proper training tools. They understand how harnesses and more passive tools like gentle leaders or just relying on treats doesn't get the job done by their own knowledge of dog training and experience, but also because people like us, people like balanced dog trainers who are effective in helping resolve behavior problems, we've seen so many retrains. We're not making it up. I mean, you could check the backstory facts. I don't know how you do that, but we really retrain at this point. Any balanced trainer I know as many or more dogs than we see as new, fresh clients. It's sad, but it's all because of the epidemic of purely positive dog trainers putting nonsensical information on the internet and saying, woohoo, I'm a dog trainer. And now it's like perpetuating. There's so many dogs in need because of this not giving people the right information about dogs being dogs. And then it's like they find a trainer and that trainer stinks, then they find another positive. And that's why once they find us, it's like, hey, this is the end of the road, guys. I can be the third, fourth, fifth trainer in some cases. And I know other balanced trainers, who are like that as well. Again, I don't call myself a balanced trainer, but if you're going to put me in a box of positive or balance, I'm going to be that. I'm certainly not a corporal punishment negative guy, too. It's like a political thing. You're either here, or here, kind of more in this area. Rational thinking. All right, so... dog whispering. So most of you know the dog whisperer, Cesar Millan, the show. People think they have, there are people who have a way with dogs, a knack. There's energy. A lot of you have seen I've talked about or done videos with chi. And there's a field. The air particles do charge. Dogs who are very sensitive to change and movement, they can feel very slight movements or oncoming presence that I would assume it feels like a ripple effect of water. So there is an ability to kind of air bend while and there's also just instinct and treating a dog like a pack animal. They basically, this type of training, it relies on a dog's natural instinct and pack order to resolve a dog's behavior problems. There's truth, like I said, but basic training and obedience have to be utilized as well when addressing severe behavior issues because there's conditioning. You have to know the full spectrum. There's so much going on when it's complicated. When a dog has behavior issues, you have to address every element. You have to make sure they're getting enough exercise. You have to be very, very thorough in what you're doing. So you have that. But I talked about energy and chi as a force. Animals and some humans are in tune with this magnetic field. They can tap into a frequency. I call it like doggy Wi-Fi. They've done studies about this. Even wild animals can sense when natural phenomena like an earthquake, tsunami happens before humans can physically detect it. So there's something that they're sensing, beyond our 5 senses or theirs as well. And then just I touch on relationship leadership training, which probably goes into the whole dog whispering thing. You create what I call it, and I've heard the term before, relational script. It's so the owner can be seen in a set of instinctive values in their dog's eyes, their leader, their boss, pack leader, whatever you want to see it as. But I use it as a very pragmatic, working your dog through the day to create this order, just to almost fake it till you make it. And then it carries over to where the problems start kicking in from a dog that's too on the case usually when everyday life goes on. Smart dogs, hypervigilant dogs, can't handle that level of responsibility. Okay, so that's that. Next chapter, I talk about dog training tools because this is a big thing. There's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of things being sold, for what they are, what they aren't. So I wanted to get a little more through this. I'm going to probably in the book give pictures, diagrams, demos, just so people can see their use or just get an idea of, the visual behind the description. Okay, so, I start off right there. So training collars, right? So collar shaming. It's a big thing I wanted to talk about right away because we're living in the harness epidemic era. A lot of people are using harnesses and being told by whether it be the online info, their own natural emotional instincts or inclinations, their purely positive trainer, their neighbor, use a harness while every dog's pulling like this. And what happens is that you end up with a dog that's triggering this opposition reflex and they want to pull. I've done many episodes, I talk about it, I show demos, I talk about this in my YouTube videos. There's a lot of, all day long I'm seeing harnesses, and if you really pay attention, dogs with harnesses are way more anxious on a walk. They're scanning, they're up ahead, and that leads to your reactivity, pulling, and God forbid they get off the harness, they're so projected ahead, this mental rubber band thing, they just get too ahead, and they just can't look back. And that's why you have to teach a dog how to focus on the walk, keep a loose leash, use a collar not to correct or choke them, but to focus them as a dog would steer the other dog. And I'm not going to get too into detail, as I've talked about in other podcasts, but this is something that really is contributing to a lot of leash-related issues. A lot of dogs are fine with other dogs on a leash until another dog is around because they're protecting the owner and they feel stuck and the owner's getting in the way of their dog business because they're restricting them on a leash. And it should be the other way. Dogs should feel most secure on a leash because there's this connection and focus, not this physical tether, and you're putting stress and pulling on your dog's body for life and making it worse and worse. How that makes sense, I don't know. Anyway, people don't want to get collar shamed. They think their dogs have a collapsed trachea, which is rarely the case. And if it is, you get that checked out and dealt with, and that's a unique situation. But short of that, it really isn't going to help putting a harness on your dog if they have a walking issue. If they walk okay, you're good. So I explained why is a collar best for problem behavior training. That's what I just got into. Types of collars. The flat collar, buckle collar is just a regular collar you put on your dog's neck. You snap it or clip it. Should fit snug, can fit somewhere on their neck, high or low. Usually putting a leash on it's going to make them pull against it, sort of like a harness, so it's not best for that. But tags, decoration, something you just grab on your dog, it's very handy. They make different materials, leather, cloth, nylon, whatnot. Slip choke. These are very handy, but some dogs will pull against the slip choke, and you don't want to be. That's when it could tighten up, and that's where you got to be careful. Metal chokers, I personally don't use. I know some trainers do, so I don't want to knock something if I don't use it, but I did in the past, and I found that it would tend to lock up a lot and cause too much tension on the dog's neck instead of something like I'll talk about here in a moment, a pinch or a star mark where it pressure releases. A nylon I feel is better because you have more slip to it. And it also just could sometimes jolt the dog if you correct too strongly. That's how I learned Ecollar method back in the 90s from a military dog trainer. And you can evolve that. You can evolve a version of that because the dogs were fine. No one was abused or no one was hurt. But there's a more skillful way to, instead of address an issue once it's already happening. I say it's like putting out a fire once it's blazing. You want to be able to not get it started in the first place. And that's where a lot of this more focus building, sensor integration type of training that I teach seems to do that if you're consistent about it, the relationship with the owner. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so then we got the pinch star mark. There's a lot of them, dominant dog collars. There's many, many different versions of collars that you can see on there. There's training catalogs like Ray Allen that has so many options, Learberg on Amazon, whatnot. Pinch, what it does, and it's not supposed to pinch. I really don't like that word because you think like these nails are digging into your dog's neck and breaking their skin. It's meant to be worn high and tight behind the ears and create this pressure to mouth on them. Sometimes you can give it a snap, but it's not going to hurt them. It's just this pressure release, and it just gets their attention. It breaks a fixation, and it really promotes a loose leash walk, so you're minimizing the amount of pressure on the dog overall. I'd rather give a dog a few little tugs with a collar and get them to focus when walking and be done with it than pulling for the rest of their life against their neck and shoulders. That's going to make them stretch out like a turtle. That's not good for dogs if they're bad walkers, even with dogs with bad backs. So that's the merit of that, and I've done more episodes where I talk about in detail. The book will give much more description, and I use those often, so those will be a little bit more, probably some kind of supplemental video showing that as well. Let's see. How am I doing, Jordan? I don't feel good today, guys, so I'm sort of faking it here with you, but I'm
I think you're doing great.
doing good. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, I'm actually learning something here.
Thank you. All
Yeah,
right.
the book come out.
I'm hanging on here. Good. All right. So in here, I talk about treats. Treats are sort of what I was talking about earlier with the purely positive training. There's reward receptors. We get treats. I always use the example. If Jordan said, Brett, I have a treat for you. Well, what do you mean? Lift up your laptop, and I look, and there's a $100 bill, and it's like, ooh, that's a nice treat. And I put it in my pocket, and he makes like some kind of noise, like a clicker. And then he goes, Brett, go look it again. And when I lift it up, he clicks it, and there's $100. Eventually, I'm going to realize when he hits the clicker, I look underneath the laptop, and I get a reward, a treat. That's how, and it's going to just become unconscious. Don't even know what the hell I'm doing. My body will just move with that sound, and that's how dogs learn through operant conditioning. And in some places, it's high value. When I teach a come or recall command, that's great. You want them to hear come, and they just unconsciously move to the sound, and you condition a response, and so a high-value treat's good for that sometimes, and you phase them out of it and build it and improve for them to earn more treats, after the fact. But to rely on it only is just kind of getting a dog hooked like a drug addict who hears their dinner bell of their fix, and then they come running to it to get what they need. And it's sort of like you're disconnected because the dogs, I don't say they become selfish, but they're more seeking out what's in it for them than connecting with you and having that, like I said before, integral kind of relationship. So that's conditioning, and I'm going to talk more about. I'll probably give some examples too. I did learn this in school in psych classes, so we can pull out some of those old studies. The pros versus cons. It just plays into a gentler approach to training. So treats of course, seem a lot easier than putting a collar on a dog because it emotionally scares people until they're educated and know actually how to use it properly and know their dogs are fine. I tell my owners, no dog's been hurt in the process, and there's been a lot of dogs I've handled, and some dogs didn't like having to go through the growth process, but physically they were unharmed. It's just how it is. So I'm very confident without any hesitation saying these tools when properly used are totally fine. Okay, so harnesses. I think I talked about harnesses. Unless you're going to teach a dog, you've seen some of my videos where I actually do carting. I've taught dogs to pull me through Beverly Hills with a cart. Use harnesses for that. So I know how to use them the proper way, and if you have question of that, go see that. You do not use them for walking. Okay, they're meant, and these same dogs, I use pinch collars on to teach them to heel, and when we're harnessing and we're doing our carting, it's a whole different thing, and they're pulling me because it's meant to do that. It's just instinct and reflex. You can't fight against it because your emotions say so. It's a weird world we live in right now, and where I've talked about that in previous podcasts about the emotion versus reality, and people want to believe because they don't like the way something looks that it's true. And maybe they're right in some cases, but in dogs I find a lot of people are making grave errors that are only hurting their dogs and stroking their emotions. And I'm the guy who has to tell you the truth. I'm getting paid to do it. It's my job, right? Okay, so that's harnesses. Let's see. And, you can use a harness if the dog walks fine and or they have a medical issue that's bona fide, or if they have to be strapped into a car, some kind of physical restraint. You don't want to stop short and pull the dog by their neck, but a harness is used for what it's appropriate for. Okay, so anti-devices like no pulls, halties, etc. They can provide a temporary resolve, but they never address the root cause of why dogs pull and do what they do. And dogs overproject, dogs over-anticipate, get too stimulated, and putting something physically may make them uncomfortable, but the issue's there and you're never going to fix it. It's like putting a Band-Aid on the problem. So I don't recommend them, and those are things that I tend to take away to get some real growth in the dog and rehabilitate them out of their problems. So yeah, it's really marketed as a quick fix gimmick. That's pretty much it. E-collars. Okay, I'm not an e-collar trainer. I'm not an expert, but I've used them off and on for years. I used them back when they were archaic, and I stopped for a while because I wasn't comfortable. The new ones are great. If you use them properly, they're not used to cause pain. They stimulate a dog. They get their attention. And I'm not a dog, but my best understanding of what I'm seeing when using it is the dogs respect something they cannot understand technology-wise or the remote idea. So they respond sometimes when you're having some issues still beyond the leash. I don't rely on it, though. A lot of trainers come, teach you how to use a remote collar, and it's like you just learned how to remote control your dog. I use it as a communication tool after you've done some work, you've set the tone, and you've worked on a couple months of good foundation training for a recall, and you want to get it off leash, and your dog's tricky. And that's why I say it's not for every dog. Some dogs, it can make the problem worse because it's so overwhelming. Where'd that come from? It's harder, or there's work that needed to be done before you introduced it to advance the training. But there's a lot of good books on it. I'll talk about that in my book as well, some references. But all in all, they're humane if you've used them. Anyone who cares about dogs and is using them, you might want to hear what they have to say. It's not a medieval torture device like some people are selling it as. And it's really because they're banning it, and I've done episodes in this podcast in the past about the e-collar ban in Europe. It's really limiting some good trainers or owners to help their dogs, and some dogs are going to not be around because of this, and some dogs aren't going to get their off-leash freedom, and these are all happy dogs. All right, so I'm going to talk more about that and detail. So I'm going to give some of how to use it in obedience and how to use it for off-leash, and I'll give you some references to even advance, what you understand beyond this book. Okay, so the use of technology. Scat mats, air horns, cameras, little snappy, any way to kind of trick your dog that's beyond something you're using to communicate. It's like, well, you just set it and forget it. They're okay, but they're like anything. If your dog is so hypervigilant, they're jumping on counters and everything in between, that should be addressed before you put scat mats all around, because they're going to figure out ways around it, or they'll only listen and respect the counters when the scat mat's out. You don't want to leave scat mats out for the rest of your life. So address what causes things, as always, and things tend to be easy to resolve. But these little, I call them gimmicks, but these extra things can help. Or with a dog that's smart that only goes in the trash if when you're not looking, it can go beyond it. So they're good, but you don't rely on them as step one. It's just to supplement or complement what you've been doing or what you are doing. Okay, so... behavioral supplements, Thundershirt, pheromones, CBDs, medications, etc. They're okay if used as supplements, but no one thing can resolve severe behavior issues. Everything is marketed as put it on your dog, give it to your dog, and it's all fixed. It could complement. I'm certainly more for something holistic versus something that is pharmaceutical. I don't think that's good. I see a lot of dogs on medications, and I'm going to talk about it in this book a little bit. And I find that there is merit in some instances, but a lot of instances it's prematurely prescribed, and the dog ends up with more problems than they started with. Anyway, and then CBDs, we'll talk about that too as an option, which I find some limited effectiveness. It's not a quick fix, and you have to be careful with the dosage. But I find that with some tougher dogs, it can complement a good training protocol. I've seen it with my own eyes, so there's some merit to that too. Let's see, I'm losing my I'm parched. Let's see, laying the foundation. We're almost through this here, at least for where we're at right now. So that's where I'm going to cut off here, because the next episode I want to go into more depth, because this is actually where it starts getting instructional, and chapter 4 here that I've set, where it's more of giving you a game plan for how to lead your dog. So I'm going to leave it off with just some of these ideas. I think you might have pulled a few bits of info and tips off of this. Thank you for letting me narrate. I think I have some more that I can add to my book now. But also, it's I think that I just pulled out some things that can be good to give you a prep for the next step of what we're going to do here with the laying the foundation. We'll talk about the home environment, the walking, right amount of exercise, and go through some behavioral problems too. So we'll do that in a future podcast. Maybe the next one or two will add that too. So stay tuned for that. Okay, good. So I think we're going to wrap up here. Thank you. Again, don't forget to share, subscribe, rate, review. Go on YouTube, subscribe to that too, my YouTube channel. And don't forget to train your dog, exercise your dog, get out there with your dog. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.